Hey, how's it going, folks? This is Hellbent, and welcome to, I don't know what the title of this video is yet, creating custom buttons, simple custom buttons. So this tutorial is going to be a little bit different than most of the other ones because I'm not going to go through every bit of thing to how to code it out and everything. Instead, what I've already done is I've created a simple beginner starter class, and I'm going to go through how it works and how the buttons themselves operate, and then if you want to make your own buttons using the same kind of styles or the same kind of system approach, then you'll know how to do that. So in other words, this would be a 2-hour, 3-hour long video. So anyways, I'm going to show you how to create these buttons here. So I have these buttons. When I mouse over them, they change color to whatever color I want, and then when I press them, they change color again. So I have feedback buttons with feedback. Very simple. They look a lot nicer than the normal GUI buttons. So I set this up as just a little demo of what it does. And let's go into how to do this. So in the description, I'm going to be including a link to a pastebin page that has the custom button class in it. Hopefully you'll be able to take the code and make it a little bit nicer than I've made it, or perhaps create different button styles, etc., that are incorporated in it. Maybe you can share with us, because I'm always looking for new custom buttons. But anyways, the buttons that we're doing, I know that it's a little bit difficult to see the sharp detail on them because the recording resolution isn't that great. So I created like basically a mock-up of kind of what it looks like. So each button consists of 5 layers. It has a bottom layer, which is a trigger, and it stores the ID, the basic ID of the button. Then it has 3 layers of progress bars in a certain configuration to make it give the appearance of a button with, shading or lighting, etc., with a nice little trim on it. And you can change I'll show you how to change all the trim colors so you can make lots of different kind of patterns. And then it has a top layer of text, and all we do is we just code it in so that way it's however we want. So this will be a little bit clear, hopefully a little bit clearer because I can zoom in on it. But basically what we see here is the black is the bottom layer of our progress bar. Then the yellow is the second layer, and then the top layer, which is our color change layer. And then on top of that, there's some text. I've also besides this mock-up here, I also did another little mock-up with a couple of buttons to show a couple of ideas. So maybe you want more of a flat style like this one here, so you can just hover over it. It slightly changes a little bit white, and then it gets a little bit darker when you press it. Likewise with these, you can have multiple different colors of trim, multiple different colors when you mouse over them. When you press down, let me see, does any of these have any other colors? Yeah, this one has different color, right? And let's go into it. So I'll go over a quick demonstration of how these buttons are built, so that way when you look at the code afterwards, you'll understand it. This code is really, it really makes adding these buttons almost no more difficult than adding a regular button. Like there's a tiny bit more that you have to add than a regular button when you add a GUI, but it's like very, very little. And then once you get used to it, it's like nothing at all. So let me create a GUI. And I'll create a simple one that basically has what it does, except that I'm not going to add in the color, the mouse over or whatever in this demo. But I'll show you exactly how it's built. So GUI show, I'll give it a width of 220 and a height of 70. So I'll just make a window big enough for a 200 by 50 button. The first thing I do is I'm going to add in the trigger layer, which is just a text control, and I'm going to set it to be, and for this example I'm going to set it so that way the button has a 10 by 10 margin all around it. So I'll set it to X10, Y10, a width of 200 and a height of 50, and then I need to attach this to a label. So this is the layer that gets the label, and it's also the layer that has the variable that's used for identifying which controller is currently being moused over or whatever. So I'm going to do test. I'm going to give it a variable test, whatever. It doesn't. We're not actually going to be using a variable, but this is basically how it's set up. There's no actual text on this at all, so I'm just going to come down here and I create this label, test, and all I'm going to do when I press this is I'm going to put it pop up. I'll do a tooltip that says here. Okay, so if I run this, we're not going to be able to see anything. Let me change the background. I don't like this background. Nice dark one. Okay, so we're not going to be able to see the button, but you can see if I click on this, it should trigger our test, right? So when I click on it, it says here. Okay, so this is the interface layer, or the trigger layer. Next on top of that goes the bottom layer of the progress bars. And there's a bunch of different ones that you can use. So for example, I was playing around with my code. I wanted to get my class working a little bit. So on the forums, I was looking at some other people's custom GUI. So this one guy, he did something in GDIP or something like that, or using images. So I wanted to recreate it using progress bars. So I came up with this, but the same idea. So this is just progress bars as well. So you can have all kinds of different styles that you can create that do the same things, right? And if you click on it, it comes down here, tells me what I clicked on. But let's go. So I'm adding in the bottom layer of the progress bars, which is going to be the dark layer, the black layer, or the whatever. Progress. I'm going to set it to the same position as the text. So x10, y10, a width of 200, and a height of 50. It doesn't. I don't need any variables because I'm not going to be actually changing anything in this demo. But I do need a background color. Background black. Okay, next is the trim layer. And I'll show you when we get through to the actual using the class. I'll show you how you can set it up so that way you don't actually have a trim. You can just match it with your background or whatever. Kind of like that white button that I had in the second demo that I had. And this one is going to start at x10, y10, but its width and height are going to be a little bit different. Now, I personally usually like having only 1 pixel for all my trim borders and everything, but it's a little bit difficult to see, so maybe you like 2. So in this demo, I'll show you 2, and then in the class itself, I'll show you how to change it so that way if you want to have a standard of 2, you can set it up that way. Also, you can add to the class so that way you have more arguments that you pass to it when you're doing the constructor for it, so that way you can tell it, okay, how many pixels do you want, and then when it constructs the image, it can you can have it do it automatically. Like one of the last minute things that I forgot to do when I was just before I started recording this, one of the things I had forgotten to do was make it so that way when you press down on the button, the text moves over 1 pixel and down 1 pixel, so it sort of looks like you actually pressed the button down, right? So the text moves over and down a little bit. I just added that in just before I started recording, but it's very simple to make those kind of changes to it. This, like I said, we're going to do it so that way this trim has a trim of 2 pixels. So the width, I'm going to make it 2 pixels less than the bottom layer. And I'm also going to make it have a height of 2 pixels less than the top layer. And then I'm going to set the background color, which is its only color. Background, let's do lime. Now we're going to do the top layer, which is the surface that you interface on the button, the thing that you would think of as the normal at the top of the button. This one gets offset. Now because we're using 2 pixel border trims and everything, I have to offset the X by 2, so it's going to be 12. I have to offset the Y by 2, so it's going to be 12. And then the width and height are 4 less than the master or the base. So a width of 190, 196 and a height of 46. And then it gets a background. And I usually like something that's close, a pretty dark color, so I'll go with like 222222, which is pretty close to. It's a little bit lighter than our background, but it's a little bit darker than, you know, I don't know, white. And then we need to add on a text layer. So this is going to be the text that we see on our button. And with this, depending on the font, you'll have to set. I'm going to have to set the font in a second. Depending on the font size you use, etc., you have to adjust this. Because there is this, I mean, I really have, I've looked, I haven't seen any vertical alignment of text, so, you know, you can center it through the width, but you can't center it by the height, as far as I know. If you know differently, put a comment down below, because really, I've spent like hours and hours and hours working aligning text over the last couple of years. So I'm going to add text. And the text, I'm going to set the X position to be the same as the top layer of my button. But the Y, I need to, depending on what the font I use. So I'm going to set up a font. Oh, I didn't name this. Font. I'm going to make it, because my button's dark, I'll make it white so that way it stands out for you guys. I'm going to set the size to 12. I'll set the quality to 5. I think I'm okay. Another thing I didn't add, I've added it to a few other projects that I've done, is I didn't add that when you hover over the button or when you press it, it doesn't underline the text. That's something I might add later on, but it's in something in my my GDIP custom button class that I'm working on, but I forgot to add it, and I don't feel like going through the code and adding that in. But anyways, it makes it look a little bit nicer. You know, you mouse over, it underlines the text. You go away and it disappears. But you can add that in. I'm sure you'll figure that out. I use this text. I'm in font. So the Y, I can't really do much until I have it. I have to see it where it is, and then I have to adjust the Y. So I'll just set it to like to 16. I'll set it 4 pixels below the top to begin with. And the width, I'll do it the same width as the top layer of my button. And then one row of text. Now I need to set this to background trans, because in other words, it's going to put on top of our progress button. It's going to have the same color as the GUI's background, so we need to make sure that the background of the text is transparent. Next thing we're going to do is center the text along its width. Like I said, I don't know how to do it by its height. I wish I did, but unfortunately I do not know. In GDIP, fortunately, you can do that. Let me see. What else do I need? I don't think I need anything, so I'll just put button 1. There's my text. Now for each of these, if we were doing this legit, what I would need to do is what I would want to do is, so whatever I call my button here, I want everything else to be an extension on that. So that way, if this has a unique name, and then these ones just have like, so I'll give you an example. I'll set it up actually. Test _1 _2 _3 So now what I can do is when I find out what the name of, by using the mouse get position and then the control ID and then switch it to the name, once I get the name of this, all I have to do in order to manipulate, I can now manipulate all the other buttons. Or once, see, if I mouse over this, one of the things it might give me is it might give me this right here. It might give me this string, or it might give me this string. So what I can do is, if I know that I only have 4 other things that are built on, or 2 characters that are built on top of the name of the actual button, so this is the actual name of my button. My button is test. All I have to do is just split it so that way these get cut off, and then now I can just use, I can say change the color of the first element, change the color of the third element, redraw the fourth element, change the font for the fourth element, etc., etc. I think this is it. I might need to adjust the text, but I think that's it. So there we go. We have a button. I need to adjust it. Maybe you, I don't know, maybe you like the text up by the top. Maybe you don't like it centered. Maybe you like it more towards the left side. Actually, we'd probably have to switch it over, but anyways, maybe you like it by the left, on the left side. Maybe you like it on the right side. But I'm gonna drop this down another 2 pixels. Alright, and there we go. So there's my button. I know you probably can't see the black that goes around it, but I can see it. And when you make it, you should be able to see it too. But this is a this is with a 2 by 2 border around it. This is what it would look like with a 1 by 1 or 1 pixel border. So that would be 99, 49, 11, 11. And when you also create, if you start working with the class, you can also create it so that way. One of the things I was working on before was I had another layer that was sort of like a shadow off to the bottom right side. 98, 48, 11, 21, 98. Alright, so this is with just a one pixel border. And I prefer this, but you might prefer 2 pixels or 3 pixels. But this is the way I like it. Okay, so this is basically how this thing works. So let me see. Are we still getting that here? Yes. Right? So I'm interacting with the bottom layer, and then through that I can do things like, so this time when I press, I'll show you a quick demo of control. I'm going to change the background color of, I'm going to change it to red, and this is going to be, now I'm going to assume that I got the name of the button that I pressed, this one right here. Actually, here, I can do this right here. Okay, when I press on this, the thing that triggered this label is going to be stored in a built-in variable called a GUI control. So what I can do now is I can do this with, I haven't tested this, so it's usually not a good idea to do things spur of the moment, but whatever. So I'm using the GUI control, and then I'm going to be changing the top layer of my button, so that's layer 3. Right? And then what I need to do, because I redrew that, or changed that, it's going to put it on top of my text, so I need to bring my text back up on top by doing GUI control plus redraw. And I'm going to be redrawing, hopefully this works, a GUI control. Oops. And this is the text layer, so it's layer 4. And knock on wood, everything should work okay. So now when I press this, it should change the top of this to red. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, so this is how it basically works. Now let's go into the class. So I've included up at the top instructions, so that way if you forget how to do it, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be typing out. I don't want to type out what all the arguments for it are. So pay attention and write them down yourself. But I will, once I'm done recording this video and uploading it, I'll include in here somewhere here. Link to video tutorial. So I'll put the link to this video in here when this video is done. So I won't post this to Pastebin until the video is done. Actually, I still have it. I mean, it's either way. I haven't posted it yet. But in here it tells you to include this script in your script that you're working on, or you can paste all the functions and methods. But I haven't tested that, and you'd probably have to change some of the things around, like where they're at. Then in your script, call up a function called pButtonStartup. Create new buttons. I'm going to go through this. We're going to create a brand new script to show you how easy it is to use this. But create new buttons by first setting a global object called pButton. So every button that you make, it has to be called pButton. You can go into the code here and change that, but if you don't go in and change it, you have to call every single button pButton. Don't worry about that. Don't worry. You'll see that it's not a big deal. pButton will be it's going to be an array of objects depending on how many buttons you make. Add your buttons by making your button a progress button class object. Example: see video for the argument meanings. This is the video. See the video and take notes, or look over the code to see what is needed. Okay. So to create a new button, all you have to do is say pButton, and then you can indicate the index. And then set that to equal a new progress button, and then the arguments. For this method here, there's one of the arguments is called button name. One of the you need a button's name. So the button's name is this position within the array, and then all those other just like in right here. Just like in here, so that's what I'm talking about. So that first button you make, its name would be 1, and then the controls on it would be 1_1, 1_2, 1_3, 1_4. Okay? The other way you can do it is just push onto your array of objects by doing pButton.push, and then inside of brackets do your new progress button and add your arguments. And instead of adding the number that you're using as an index, just use the length. Just use pButton.length plus 1, and that's going to be the name. So the first time you do this, the button's name will be 1, and the next time it will be 2, 3, 4. But you can also do it this way as well, where you manually type in which button you're using. 5. Add the button presses. So all the labels for your buttons, they need to be their own. Like, you can have all the custom buttons be attached to the same label, but you can't really have anything else attached to the label or function that the button is, because as soon as it launches the button, as soon as it launches, like right now, as soon as I press on it, it's going to launch into the method for this button, right? So as long as I hold down, it's going to keep holding down, and if I release now, it's good. So it needs to be you need to have. You can write it so that way you test first to see, but that's extra code. It's just better just to make its own label. I've also, one other thing that I did was, somebody asked me about this like a month ago or so. They were asking about with custom buttons how to make it so that way if I press down and then when I release, my mouse is here, it does what I want it to do. But if I press down and move my cursor away, I want it to cancel. So now, if this was attached to doing something, I think this one here is attached to doing something. So right here, if I press this, it starts a counter. Right? It starts a counter. But if I press it and then move my mouse and then release, it ignores it. It cancels that action. So we'll go into this. So here's I did an example of how what you put into the label or the function that the button triggers. So when you press the button, it triggers a label. This is these two lines of code right here. This if not p button a index. Actually, it wouldn't be a index. It would be a GUI control. Or if you know exactly which button it is, you'd put the button's name in there. But this would be, you'd put a GUI control in here or whatever. This is just an example. So you put these in at the top of your label, and like this. Okay, so here, my label, you put in these two lines of code, and then after that, all the stuff that you normally want your button to do. So all this is here, the return here is if you moved your cursor away when you held it down. So if you held it down, moved your cursor away and released to cancel it, that's the cancel. Okay, the class itself, it's got a couple global variables. The startup, all the startup does is sets a timer to keep track of where your cursor is and check to see if it's in one of the custom buttons, and that's how it turns on the different colors for the hover and turns it back off, etc. So there's two conditions that are set. The first condition is, are you currently holding down one of your buttons? If you're currently holding down one of your buttons, it's not going to worry about any of the hovering stuff. The second thing is a button to keep it so that way this doesn't run and flicker to go crazy. It only it only does the color change once when you put your mouse over it and once when you move your mouse away. And it's set up so that way it looks for this variable hover. So if hover on is by default set to 0, and then if you move your cursor over, it'll check the name of the control, which is that bottom layer of the text, that bottom text layer, and it does the little, or it checks the top layer or whatever, and it does a string, it gets the string length, and then cuts that string lefts 2 spaces to get rid of the /1, /2, /3, and then it loops over all the buttons that you have created. So every single custom button you've created, it loops over it, and it tries to match that with the button's name. If it matches it, it calls up the method for the hover, which does this stuff here, GUI control, redrawing it, changing the color. And then once that's done, it changes the variable to be hover on, so that way it can't come back into here until the color for hovering has been turned off again. And it updates a button with B name so it can match it. So if we move our mouse over a button, hover is now going to be on. It's going to be changed color and hover is going to be on. So it's going to start using into here. And it's as soon as we move our mouse off the button, it's going to change its color back to its default color and set hover mode back to 0. So that way it can come back up to here so it can test if we're in new buttons again. So that's how it works, how the hover works. Then there's the class itself. A new class requires these arguments: a Windows name, so GUI1, GUI2, GUI Bob, whatever. You need to pass it that. So whatever GUI you're going to be adding your buttons to. So if this was GUI2 and I want all these things to be on GUI2, I'd change them all to 2. So I'm sure you understand. Okay, that's that. The next thing is the button's name, which is the index of the button you've created. So each time you create a button, it gets that, you create it with that index. Or the first button is index 1, the second button is index 2, index 3, index 4, or if you're doing the push method, it automatically, you have to pass it the argument, the length of the number of buttons you have plus 1. So the first time you have 0 buttons, so the length is 0, so you add 1 to it, so the name is 1. So that's the second argument. I take notes if you want. Button name. The next one is the label or function you're going to be passing, sending this click to. When you click on it, this is the thing that's going to get executed. So the name of the label. I didn't really bother. You can change the order of these if you want. Then this you can actually, if you want, you can condense it down into one single string. Right, X, Y, width, and height. So you need X, Y, width, height. Then there's 5 colors. There's the bottom color, which in our case over here was the, let me get rid of that, was the black layer, which is the bottom of the button. The second one is the trim color. So in this one here, it was the lime color. The next is the 3 colors for the top of the button. The first one is the top of the button when it's at rest. The second one is when you're hovering over it. And the third one is when you press down. The next parameter argument is the button's text that you want to have displayed on it. Then the next argument is the offset for the text. So the offset is like in here, how I had to play around with the y-axis in order to get the text lined up. Here, you just pass that as an argument, so you don't have to go through all your buttons. And if you're using multiple of the same size of buttons, you know, like 100 pixels by 30 pixels or something like that, then once you figure it out for the first button, you'll have it figured out for the rest. You just copy it, which we'll go over. So once you create a new button, it's going to automatically create some IDs, everything, and then it's going to launch add the buttons. And in here, it does all that stuff that we did, those 5 controls, the 2 text controls and the 3 progress controls that we did out manually. It's going to do that automatically. Right? And then there's 3 methods that get called. 3 other methods that get called. 2 of them are for the hover. One is for the turning the hover on. When I put my mouse over something, it goes to the hover on method. The second one is the hover off method, which is what changes the color back to its default value. And then the last one is the button press method, which changes the color down to its button press. When you press it down. And when you release it, it stays in that color until you release your left mouse button. And then depending on whether your mouse is still over the control or not, it checks whether you're still over the control. If you're still over the control, it automatically sets you to be back in hover mode. And then if you're not, it sets you back to default mode. And either, depending on which one it is, it either returns this method either returns a true or a false. So if it returns a false, the other stuff in your label, like all the stuff that your label would do, like add this, do that, save this file. If your mouse isn't over the button when you release it, it's going to cancel that. It's just going to return. Right? If your mouse is still over the button when you release, then it's going to return true, and it'll actually execute that code. So that's it. That is the whole of the class. It's very simple. I'm going to be probably in the there's a project that I want to be doing pretty soon that I'm also going to need tabs, checkboxes, and radio buttons. So I'll probably expand this class pretty soon, but for now it's just buttons. So let's go ahead and use it. So how do we use the class? So the first thing I need to do is, well, I'm going to set my script to be set batch lines to -1. Then I'm going to include that class. And I've already put it into my library folder. If you don't put it into your library folder, just type out include the full name of it. So you don't have to call it what I've called it. I've called it Hellbent P button class, but you don't have to call it that. Just make sure you include the name that you do call the script. Right, I have it in my library, so I'm going to use the less than minus, less than greater than sign, and in between that I'm going to include P button class. Got to spell it right. Okay, the next thing I need to do is I need to run the startup. So I'm going to call the function P button startup. I just created this class today, so I haven't used it a lot. So when I get to the button, adding the buttons part, I'm probably going to need to cheat and go and look at what my arguments are. So we're going to call this, which starts up the timer, which actually does all the hover changes and everything. Next, I'll create a GUI. GUI 1. I'll add some options. I'll make this always on top. That's good enough. I'll set a background color. Okay, here I'll make it a little bit lighter so you can see the contrast, but I don't like the GUI to be this light. 333333. Okay, and then I'll just show it. GUI 1 show. I'll give it a width of 300 and a height of 300. It's arbitrary. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so now all we need to do, I think, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set a font. And I can change the font for each button. I can also change the sizes of all the buttons. So one button can be really big, one button can be really small. Button, what am I doing? Font. C, I'll do it white so you can see it better. Size, I don't like it too big, so I'll try 10. Q5, I'll set the quality to 5. I'll make it bold, and I'll just use Arial. But I don't really like that font. Okay, so now I think I can go ahead and create some buttons. So I'll do both methods. For the first button, I'll use the, oh yes, there is one more thing. I need to make a global object prototype called P button. P button is an object. Okay, now I can start creating some P buttons or progress buttons. And remember, each button has to have this name unless you go through the class and actually change everything. P button, I'm going to do 1 and set it to equal a new progress button. And pass in my arguments. The first argument is the window that I'm using, which is window 1, GUI 1. The second argument is the button's name, which is the same as its index. This is button 1. The next thing I need is the function or label that I'm attaching this to. So and this needs to be in quotes. Alright, so that way I don't forget, I'll come down here right away. And I'll set it so that way we can test right away. Okay, the next argument I need, I think, is the XY width and height. I'm going to cheat. XY width and height. Okay. So I'm going to do it at, first I'll do the first button at X10, Y10. I'll give it a width of 200, and I'll give it a height of 50. The next arguments, I think, are the colors. Yes, they are. Okay. So colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Black. The trim, I'll do red. Actually, you know what? Red's going to be a little bit hard for you to see because I know my screen, the resolution isn't that high, so it's going to blend. It's going to blur a little bit, so I'll make it yellow so it stands out a little bit. And I can also use the 6-digit RGB hex code. So for red it would be no, it's yellow. So yellow FFFF00. Right, the top of my button, I'll make it 222222. The the hover color, I'll make 004488, which is like a bluish color. Actually, I'll make that a little bit lighter. So like 77AA. This is the pressed down. I'll make it a little bit darker than its normal color, so I'll make it like 202020. The next argument I need is the font. No, what? The text. I think it's the text. Yes. Okay, I need the text. So what text do I want to put on my button? Demo button. The last argument is the offset, but I don't really know what the offset's going to be yet, so I'm just going to pick an arbitrary value for now and see how it looks after, of 17. I think that's good. I knock on wood, but I think we have a button now. Okay, there we go. And if I mouse over it, we should see it change to a bluish color. Okay, that's it. That's how easy it is to add a button. Really, that's it. So I think my offset's pretty good too. I think I did a pretty good job centering that. I mean, I've been working with these buttons for a couple hours now, but so let's add another button. So this time I'll do it the other method where I'm just pushing onto it. So I'm going to do P button. Oh yes. Wait. There's one more thing. Right now, it can trigger and everything, but I'm not seeing the animation changed for the press. So in my label, I need to attach that statement. If exclamation point P button. Did I do? Yes, I did. P button. And the index is going to be whatever GUI launched, whatever control launched this label. So it'll be a GUI control. And then I'm going to call the press button or button press. I think it's button press. Button underscore press method. If it's not, like if what this is saying is if my cursor is over here when I release the button, then all I want to do is return. In other words, I can display my tooltip. Which actually, you know what, I'll do something else. I'll do loop 500 tooltip a index. And then I'll turn off the tooltip. Okay. So now that I have that, I should see it change from blue to a darker color than the top of the button. So it's this color now. It should be slightly darker when I press on it. Okay, there we go. If I move my cursor over here, nothing happens. If I release it, we should get a counter. Okay. So that's one button. Let's go ahead and add another button using the push method. So P button dot push, and then everything goes inside of these brackets or parentheses. So what I'm going to be doing is a new progress button, and then the arguments. The arguments are going to be 1. This time, for its name, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use P button dot length plus 1. So however many buttons I have, add 1 to that because this button hasn't been added yet. Plus 1. Let me go through the label I want. I'm going to add this to another label. I'm going to call it stop. And actually, I'll make it a function to show you that you can use functions too. I'll set this to X. I'll just put it on right underneath, because you'll get the point. I'll put it right underneath. So I'll go 10 pixels under it. So 50, 60, 70, Y70, I'll give it a width of 100. I'll give it a height of 30. For color, I'll do an off-white button. I don't really like them, but you guys might like them, like solid color buttons. Okay, that's the bottom. The trim layer, I'm also going to make the same color. The top layer rest, top layer hover, top layer pressed. So rest is I'll make the inner part, I'll make it B, 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 B. If I hover over it, I'll make it F, 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 F. And if I press it, I'll make it 999999. Okay, next I need my text. And my offset. Now I was playing around with offsets earlier, so I know it's 6 for... Oh wait, I don't know it's 6 because I'm using a different font this time. Because I'm going to be having a white button, I can't very well have white text, so let's change the font. So all I'm going to do is, I'm just going to come in here, and let's say if I didn't want it to be bold, I can just go norm, and all those like underline things and everything, it'll get canceled out. But this is Arial, so I'll make it bold. I'm going to go with what color do I want? Black. Let's go with black. I think I have enough, so let's go ahead and run it. And I have an error. Oh, I forgot to add my label. So I stop. I need a. So like I said, you can use labels, but you can also just do a function, and it works the exact same way. So I need this line here to do my button presses, and then what's this guy going to do? This guy is going to do. He's going to take a variable called stop, and he's going to equal it to 1. And then in the first one, I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to change this guy's name to start. Oh, wait. I want this to be stop. Stop equals 1. That's good. Up here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, as soon as it finishes checking to see if I'm over it, I'm going to go stop colon equals 0. And then instead of looping a normal loop, I'm going to do while stop. Nope. While not stop. So while stop equals 0, go ahead and keep looping. Okay, there we go. I think I have everything I need now. Let's go ahead. So here's what I was talking about, like a little white button or whatever. If I hover over it, it should get really bright. And then if I press down, it should get a little bit darker than it begins with. Alright. And you can do, maybe I want the mouse over to be, maybe I want this to be something like 00 AAFF. So now it's got like a bluish color or whatever. Right, and that offset is actually a little bit off. 7. Whatever. I don't want to be. I shouldn't be nitpicking on it because I'm going to be throwing this in the garbage in a few seconds, or in a few minutes. Okay, so if I press start, it should start a counter. No problem. I can still hover over while everything's working in the background. Right, and if I go over here and press stop. It should stop the tooltip and hide it. No, it didn't work. What's going on? Stop. While not stop. Oh, I know why. Because I'm using a damn function. Alright, let's do that again. Stop. There we go. Okay, so we can see we have full functionality of launching different labels or whatever through our GUI. Okay, that's it. I'll add one last button just to show you, it's simple. I'm just going to duplicate this line here, and I'm going to change a few things. I don't need to change the GUI. I don't need to change its name. I'm going to add a new label, W_E, whatever. I'm going to put this at X, I'll put it right beside this button here. So this button is 100 pixels, so that's 110, 120, 110, 120. Am I right? 120? I'm having a little bit of hard time thinking right now. 120. I'll make this one a normal, more that I like. Black. I'll give it a trim of lime. I'll give the surface of the button a 111111, really dark color. I'll make when I hover over it, it turns a reddish color, so maybe AA 000, no, AA 3333, and I'll make this 050505. Last button. Okay, that should work. So that's how it was. I just, damn it, I made a new, of course, I made a freaking new WE. I need to include my function. If not, P button a GUI control dot button press, and if it is, return. If not, pop up my message. Okay, last time. 47. Line 47, I have an invalid argument. Oh. Okay. Ooh. Gotta change that. We can't end like that. Nope. I'm gonna change this back to this, but I'll change it to lime. Okay, there we go. Last button. Hover over it, turns red. And goodbye. Okay, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you make any changes to the class. You can share it with everyone by posting a link to a Pastebin page or something down in the description. Maybe you can go ahead and create the some checkbox class, radio button, methods, and everything like that. But anyways, hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. Hope you like this. But peace.